Taehyung noticed it before anyone else did. Not the camera, not the director, not even Jungkook himself. It was the way Jungkook's smile lingered half a second too long. The way his laugh sounded a little forced, a little louder than usual, like he was trying to convince himself he was fine. Taehyung had learned that sound years ago, memorized it the same way you memorize a scar you didn't mean to touch again. They were filming a light, playful segment, nothing serious. The kind of content fans loved: easy laughter, casual banter, effortless chemistry. Jungkook stood under the studio lights, sleeves rolled up, hair styled perfectly, every movement framed to look natural even though nothing about being watched ever really was. And yet something was off. Taehyung watched from the other side of the set, arms crossed loosely, posture relaxed in a way that fooled everyone except himself. Jungkook was flirting, not loudly, not recklessly, but just enough. A comment here, a glance there. The kind that slipped past scripts and landed somewhere personal. The cameras loved it. Taehyung didn't. The crew laughed. A few staff members exchanged amused looks. Someone whispered, "He's in a good mood today," as if that explained anything. Taehyung felt it instead, a tightening in his chest, subtle at first, like the beginning of a headache you try to ignore. Jungkook's eyes flickered toward him for the briefest moment. Just one glance, enough to confirm it wasn't accidental. And then Jungkook smiled wider. That was when something shifted. The studio lights hummed overhead, bright and unforgiving. A set designed to feel warm suddenly felt sterile, like a stage dressed up as comfort. Taehyung's jaw tightened. He didn't move. He didn't need to. His body already knew what his mind was refusing to say. This wasn't part of the plan. Jungkook laughed again, leaning closer to the actress beside him, his tone teasing, his hand lifting just slightly, too close, too familiar. The director didn't call cut. Why would he? This was good footage. This was engagement. This was exactly the kind of moment that went viral. Taehyung felt his pulse spike. For a second the room blurred. Not dramatically, just enough to make him realize he was holding his breath. He exhaled slowly, carefully, like control was something fragile that could shatter if handled too roughly. He told himself it didn't matter. He told himself this was acting. He told himself he had no right to feel anything at all. But the lie didn't settle. Jungkook's laughter rang out again, brighter now, almost sharp. Taehyung caught the way his shoulders stiffened afterward, the way his eyes searched the room, landing on Taehyung once more. This time the look lingered. A challenge. Taehyung's fingers curled slightly at his side. The director finally called cut. Applause followed, light and automatic. People moved, relaxed, reset. Conversations overlapped. The moment should have ended there. It didn't. Jungkook stepped back, still smiling, but Taehyung saw it, the crack beneath the surface. The way Jungkook's chest rose a little too fast. The way his eyes avoided Taehyung now, like eye contact might spark something neither of them could afford. Taehyung didn't follow him backstage, not immediately. He stayed where he was, forcing himself to breathe normally, forcing his expression into something neutral. Years of practice made it easy. Years of hiding had turned restraint into instinct. But inside, something was unraveling. He had seen that look before. The flirtation that wasn't just performance. The deliberate crossing of a line thin enough to deny but sharp enough to cut. Jungkook only did that when he was restless, or angry, or trying to prove something he didn't know how to say out loud. Taehyung knew all of Jungkook's tells. That was the problem. Backstage, the atmosphere was different, quieter. Conversations dipped when Jungkook passed. Someone offered him water. Someone else asked if he was okay. Jungkook nodded, smiled, said he was fine. Taehyung watched from a distance, unreadable. Finally, Jungkook disappeared into his dressing room. The door closed with a soft click that echoed louder than it should have. Taehyung waited, counted his breaths, told himself to stay where he was. He didn't listen. The hallway felt longer than usual. Each step echoed, steady, controlled. Taehyung stopped outside the door, hesitating for the briefest moment. He lifted his hand, then dropped it. The door opened before he could knock. Jungkook stood there, eyes widening just slightly before he masked it. Taehyung. Taehyung studied him in silence, the faint tension in his shoulders, the forced calm. The question Jungkook didn't ask but clearly wanted answered. "Can we talk?" Taehyung said quietly. Jungkook stepped aside without a word. The door closed behind them, sealing off the noise of the set, the expectations, the cameras. The room felt smaller than it should have, intimate in a way that made Taehyung's pulse quicken despite himself. Jungkook turned, arms crossing defensively. "If this is about the shoot." "It wasn't just acting," Taehyung interrupted. The words landed harder than he intended. Jungkook stiffened. "You don't know that." "I do," Taehyung said. His voice was calm, too calm. "I know you." A beat of silence stretched between them. Jungkook looked away first. "That's not fair," he muttered. Taehyung took a step closer. "Then tell me what that was." Jungkook laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. It was a scene. People liked it. The cameras liked it. "I didn't." "That did it." Jungkook's head snapped up. His eyes flashed, something raw breaking through the careful control. "You're not supposed to." The words hit Taehyung square in the chest. "I'm not supposed to what?" he asked quietly. "Notice, care." Jungkook's jaw clenched. "Feel ownership over something that isn't yours to claim." The room went still. Taehyung stared at him, searching his face for something. Regret, hesitation, anything. But Jungkook held his ground, breathing hard, eyes bright with something dangerously close to anger. "You did that on purpose," Taehyung said finally. Jungkook didn't deny it. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them felt charged, heavy with everything they had never said. Taehyung felt the familiar pull, the instinct to step back, to smooth things over, to pretend this was nothing more than stress and miscommunication. But something inside him refused to let it go. "Why?" he asked. Jungkook swallowed. His voice came out lower. "Because I don't know what we are anymore." The words landed like a blow. Taehyung didn't move, didn't breathe. The silence stretched, fragile and unbearable, as the truth settled between them, sharp, exposed, and impossible to ignore. Taehyung left the dressing room without another word. Not because he didn't have anything to say, but because he had too much. The hallway outside felt colder, narrower, like the building itself was pressing in on him. He walked with measured steps, head high, expression neutral. To anyone watching, he looked composed, professional, untouched. Inside, he was unraveling. Jungkook's words echoed again and again, looping without mercy. "I don't know what we are anymore." It wasn't anger that hurt the most. It was the uncertainty. The way Jungkook had said it, not cruelly, not dramatically, but like someone admitting exhaustion, like someone who had been waiting too long for an answer that never came. Taehyung stopped near the far end of the corridor, leaning against the wall as if he needed the support. He closed his eyes briefly, inhaling slowly, grounding himself the way he'd learned over years of pressure and silence. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. They had rules, unspoken ones maybe, but real all the same. No scenes, no lines crossed in public, no moments that couldn't be explained away as performance. They survived on subtlety, on looks that meant nothing to everyone else and everything to them. And Jungkook had shattered that balance on camera. Footsteps echoed nearby. Staff members passed, nodding politely. Someone asked if he was okay. Taehyung smiled automatically and said he was fine. The lie slid off his tongue easily. It always had. Back on set, filming resumed as if nothing had happened. The world didn't stop for private fractures. The director adjusted angles, Assistants checked lighting. Laughter rose again, rehearsed and hollow. Taehyung took his place when called, body moving on muscle memory alone. Jungkook stood across from him, carefully avoiding eye contact now. That somehow hurt more than the earlier provocation. They read lines, they laughed on cue, they played their roles perfectly. But something had shifted. Taehyung could feel it in the space between them, thick, heavy, charged. The chemistry everyone praised had twisted into something dangerous. Every glance felt like a challenge. Every missed look felt like rejection. When the shoot finally wrapped, relief rippled through the crew. Phones came out. Clips were replayed. Someone laughed about how intense things had felt today. Taehyung didn't laugh. He headed straight for the exit, needing air, needing distance. Outside, the sky hung low and gray, heavy with humidity and unspoken tension. He pulled his hoodie up, hands shoved into his pockets, walking aimlessly just to burn off the restless energy coiling inside him. His phone vibrated. Once, twice, then continuously. He stopped and looked. Messages, notifications, mentions. His name was trending. Taehyung's stomach dropped. He opened one clip just a few seconds long. Jungkook laughing, leaning in, that look. Then Taehyung in the background, expression unreadable, eyes sharp. The caption was already doing the damage. Did you see Taehyung's face? That tension was not scripted. Something is going on between them. Jungkook flirting, Taehyung looked furious. The comments were a wildfire. Taehyung exhaled slowly, thumb hovering over the screen. He should have known. The fans noticed everything, every micro-expression, every shift in energy. Nothing stayed hidden for long. Another notification popped up, a longer clip this time, slowed down, zoomed in, annotated with arrows and speculation. His jaw tightened. This was exactly what they had tried to avoid. He locked his phone and slipped it back into his pocket, just as a familiar voice called his name. Taehyung. Taehyung turned. Jimin stood a few steps away, concern written plainly across his face. He didn't joke, didn't tease. That alone told Taehyung how bad things looked. You saw it, Taehyung said quietly. Jimin nodded. Everyone has. They stood there for a moment, the city noise filling the silence between them. What happened? Jimin asked gently. Taehyung hesitated, then shook his head. Later. Jimin didn't push. He never did. Management's already asking questions. Of course they were. Taehyung let out a dry breath. What about Jungkook? Jimin's expression tightened. He left early, didn't say where he was going. That shouldn't have surprised him, still it stung. That night Taehyung didn't sleep. He lay on his bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the day frame by frame. Jungkook's smile, the look in his eyes, the words in that dressing room that refused to fade. I don't know what we are anymore. At some point, exhaustion dragged him under. He woke to chaos. His phone buzzed relentlessly, the screen lighting up with messages from staff, group chats, managers. Headlines were already forming, speculation evolving into theories, the narrative slipping out of their control piece by piece. Taehyung sat up, running a hand through his hair. His chest felt tight, like he'd been bracing for impact all night, and the collision had finally arrived. A knock sounded at the door. He opened it to find Jungkook standing there. For a second, neither of them spoke. Jungkook looked different, quieter. His shoulders were tense, eyes rimmed with fatigue. He held his phone loosely in one hand, screen dark. They know, Jungkook said finally. Taehyung stepped aside. Come in. The door closed behind them, with a finality that made Taehyung's pulse quicken. Jungkook leaned back against the wall, exhaling sharply. It's everywhere. Clips, theories, hashtags, they're dissecting everything. I saw, Taehyung said. Silence settled between them again, heavier now. "This wasn't how I wanted it to happen," Jungkook said quietly. Taehyung looked at him. "Then why did you do it?" Jungkook's jaw tightened. "Because I'm tired." The honesty in his voice cut deeper than anger ever could. "Tired of pretending," Jungkook continued. "Tired of walking on lines no one else can see. Tired of feeling like I have to hide parts of myself just to survive." Taehyung's chest ached. "And you thought blowing it up on camera was the answer?" "No," Jungkook snapped, then softened. "I thought maybe you'd finally react." Taehyung stared at him. "You wanted to hurt me. I wanted to know if you still felt something." The room went still. Taehyung took a slow step forward. "I've always felt something, you know that." "Then why does it always feel like I'm the only one risking anything?" Jungkook asked. The question hung between them, raw and unanswered. Before Taehyung could respond, Jungkook's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, face paling slightly. "It's management," he said. "They want a meeting, both of us." Taehyung nodded. He had expected this. Jungkook looked up at him, eyes searching. "Whatever happens, I didn't mean to turn us into a spectacle." Taehyung held his gaze. "We already are." Neither of them smiled. As they left the room together, Taehyung felt the weight of the moment settle fully onto his shoulders. The secrecy that had protected them for so long was cracking. The world was watching now, hungry and relentless. And for the first time, Taehyung wasn't sure whether holding on or letting go would hurt more. Outside, cameras flashed somewhere down the street. A reminder, a warning. The conference room felt colder than it should have. Glass walls, neutral colors, a long table polished to perfection, reflecting faces that refused to soften. Taehyung sat beside Jungkook, close enough that their arms almost touched, yet the space between them felt wider than ever. Across from them, managers and staff shuffled papers, tablets glowing with charts and screenshots. No one smiled. No one asked how they were doing. The door closed. That sound sealed something. This escalated faster than expected. One of the senior managers began, tone measured, professional. "Clips from yesterday's shoot are trending globally. The narrative is no longer contained." Taehyung listened, jaw tight, as if the words were aimed at someone else. He watched Jungkook instead. The way his knee bounced slightly under the table. The way his fingers laced together, then unlinked, then clenched. "They're speculating about your relationship," another voice continued. "Fan reactions are divided. Sponsors are asking questions." "Not concern, questions." Taehyung finally spoke. "What are you asking us to do?" A pause. "We need to control the narrative," the manager said, "before it controls you." A tablet slid across the table toward them. Taehyung glanced down. A prepared statement, polished, careful, empty. "Misunderstanding. Professional boundaries. No romantic involvement." His chest tightened. Jungkook leaned forward. "This isn't true." The manager met his gaze without flinching. "It's necessary." "Necessary?" Taehyung felt something inside him harden. "Necessary for who?" "For everyone," the manager replied smoothly. "The group, the brand, your future." Taehyung laughed once quietly without humor. "You mean your comfort?" The room stiffened. "You knew the risks," another staff member said. "You've both been in this industry long enough to understand what's expected." Taehyung turned to Jungkook, searching his face. He saw the conflict there, the fear, the exhaustion, the part of him that still wanted to believe there was a way out that didn't cost everything. Taehyung made his decision. "No," he said. The word cut clean through the room. "I'm not signing that," he continued, voice steady. "I won't lie." Silence followed, thick and heavy. "This isn't about lying," the manager said carefully. "It's about survival." Taehyung leaned back in his chair. "Then maybe we need to redefine what that means." Jungkook's head snapped toward him. Surprise flickered across his face, followed by something softer: gratitude, fear, love tangled into something dangerous. The meeting ended without resolution. Promises of further discussion, warnings disguised as concern. When they left the building, the air outside felt sharp, alive. Cameras waited at a distance now, not rushing, watching, learning. They didn't speak until they were inside the car. "You didn't have to do that," Jungkook said quietly. Taehyung looked at him. "Yes, I did." Jungkook swallowed. "You know what this could cost." "I know," Taehyung replied. "I've always known." That night, Taehyung sat alone in his apartment, lights off, city glowing beyond the windows. His phone lay face up on the table, buzzing every few minutes with messages he refused to open. Fans, friends, unknown numbers. He didn't need to read them to know what they said. He thought about the years he'd spent being careful, choosing silence, letting moments pass untouched because touching them would mean consequences. He thought about Jungkook's face when he laughed on camera, that sharp, reckless edge that had sparked all of this. And he thought about the question Jungkook had asked without words. "Do you still feel something?" His phone buzzed again. This time it was Jungkook. Taehyung answered without thinking. "Come over," Jungkook said. No greeting, no explanation, just those two words. "I'm already on my way," Taehyung replied. Rain had started falling by the time he arrived. The streets blurred under neon reflections, the city reduced to streaks of light and shadow. Jungkook opened the door before Taehyung could knock. They stood there for a moment, rain-soaked and silent. Inside, the apartment felt different, exposed, like a place where walls had heard too much already. Jungkook paced, restless energy filling the room. "They're going to push harder," he said. "They won't let this go." "I know. They might make us choose." Taehyung watched him carefully. "And what would you choose?" Jungkook stopped packing. He looked at Taehyung, then really looked at him, like he was memorizing something. "I don't know," he admitted. "That's the problem." Taehyung stepped closer. "I do." Jungkook's breath hitched. "You always say that like it's easy." "It's not easy," Taehyung said softly. "It's just clear." He reached out, stopping just short of touching Jungkook, a line drawn deliberately. "I'm done pretending I don't care," he continued. "I'm done watching you hurt just so everything looks perfect." Jungkook's eyes glistened. "And if the world doesn't forgive us?" Taehyung smiled faintly. "Then we learn to live without its approval." Jungkook laughed shakily. "You make it sound so simple." "It isn't," Taehyung said, "but it's honest." They stood there, the space between them vibrating with everything unsaid. Finally, Jungkook closed the distance, resting his forehead against Taehyung's. No cameras, no audience. Just them. A soft sound broke the moment. A notification. Jungkook pulled back, checking his phone. His expression changed instantly. "What?" Taehyung asked. Jungkook turned the screen toward him. A photo, grainy, taken from across the street. The two of them at the doorway, close, unmistakable. "Already spreading." "They followed you," Jungkook whispered. Taehyung felt the room tilt. "So this is how it happens." Jungkook laughed bitterly. "We don't even get to choose the timing." Taehyung took a deep breath. "Then we choose the response." The next morning, the world exploded. Headlines replaced speculation with certainty. Phrases like confirmed, intimate, and unavoidable flooded every platform. Some fans defended them fiercely. Others condemned them just as loudly. Taehyung scrolled until his hands shook, then stopped. This wasn't about control anymore. It was about truth. Jungkook stood beside him, silent, waiting. "We can still deny it," Jungkook said finally. "Say it's nothing, write it out." Taehyung turned to him. "Do you want to?" Jungkook hesitated. That hesitation was everything. Taehyung reached for his hand, held it firmly. "Then don't." Jungkook looked at their joined hands, then back at Taehyung. If we do this, there's no going back. Taehyung squeezed his hand. I know. The room was quiet. The city outside roared. Then let's stop hiding, Jungkook said. Taehyung nodded. They set up the camera themselves. No managers, no script, just the truth, raw and terrifying. When the red light turned on, Taehyung felt fear surge through him like electricity. But he didn't look away. The red light stared back at them like an eye that would never blink. Taehyung sat still, hands resting on his knees, posture calm in a way that felt almost deceptive. Jungkook was beside him, shoulders square, jaw tight. Neither of them smiled. Neither of them looked away. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Taehyung spoke. I'm Taehyung. His voice was steady, too steady, considering the storm waiting outside that lens. I know many of you have seen the videos, he continued. The clips, the screenshots, the moments slowed down and pulled apart until they mean something bigger than what they were. Jungkook glanced at him briefly, then back at the camera. Taehyung inhaled. We didn't plan for this to happen publicly, but what you're seeing isn't a performance. The words landed heavier than he expected. Jungkook shifted, then spoke. We've been asked to clarify, to deny, to smooth things over so everyone can move on comfortably. Taehyung felt his chest tighten at the word comfortably. But we don't want to lie, Jungkook said. The silence after that sentence felt endless. Taehyung continued, choosing each word with care. There are parts of our lives you don't see, choices we make quietly, feelings we learn to bury because it's easier than explaining them. He paused, eyes lowering for just a second before lifting again. Yesterday those lines blurred, and people noticed. Jungkook's voice softened. That wasn't an accident. Taehyung reached for Jungkook's hand slowly, deliberately. Their fingers intertwined in full view of the camera. No hesitation, no retreat. We care about each other, Taehyung said. More than colleagues, more than friends. He felt Jungkook's grip tighten, grounding him. We don't expect everyone to understand, Jungkook added, and we're not asking for permission. Taehyung nodded. We're asking for honesty from ourselves first. The red light blinked off. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then Jungkook exhaled shakily, running a hand through his hair. That's it, he said. We really did it. Taehyung leaned back against the couch, adrenaline crashing through him. Yeah. They didn't have time to process the relief before the phone started ringing. Messages poured in faster than either of them could read. Management, members, family, friends, unknown numbers flooding the screen like a tidal wave. Taehyung's phone buzzed with a call he had expected but still dreaded. He answered. Yes, he said quietly. The voice on the other end was tight, controlled. We need to talk immediately. Taehyung glanced at Jungkook, who was watching him closely. We already have, Taehyung replied, publicly. The pause on the line was long. This has consequences, the voice warned. Taehyung closed his eyes briefly. I know. The call ended without another word. Hours passed in fragments, news alerts, headlines multiplying, clips of the video spreading faster than anyone could contain, reactions pouring in from every corner of the world. Some fans cried in support, others felt betrayed, some accused them of manipulation, others thanked them for courage. Taehyung scrolled through it all until the noise blurred into a single hum. This is too much, Jungkook murmured. Taehyung locked his phone and set it aside, then stopped looking. Jungkook looked at him. How are you so calm? Taehyung thought about that for a moment. I'm not calm, he said honestly. I'm just done running. Night fell quietly as if the city itself was holding its breath. They sat together on the floor, backs against the couch, lights dimmed. No talking, just presence. Somewhere past midnight, there was a knock at the door. Taehyung's heart jumped. He opened it to find Jimin standing there, hood pulled low, eyes wide with concern. "You okay?" Jimin asked. Taehyung stepped aside. "Come in." Jimin looked between them, taking in the tension, the closeness, the reality he'd suspected but never seen this clearly. "You really went for it," Jimin said softly. Jungkook let out a humorless laugh. "Looks like it." Jimin sat down, elbows on his knees. Management is losing their minds. Taehyung smiled faintly. That was always going to happen. Jimin looked at him seriously. "Are you sure about this?" Taehyung didn't hesitate. "Yes." Jimin nodded slowly. "Then I've got your backs, both of you." The next morning, the building was surrounded. Not screaming crowds, not chaos. Just cameras. Flashes followed every step as they entered for the emergency meeting. Taehyung kept his expression neutral, Jungkook's shoulder brushing his occasionally like a silent reminder that he wasn't alone. Inside, the mood was cold. "We need damage control," a manager said bluntly. "This isn't bravery, it's reckless." Taehyung met his gaze. "It's honest." "Honesty doesn't pay contracts," another voice snapped. Jungkook leaned forward. "Neither does pretending forever." The room erupted into overlapping voices. Risks, markets, backlash, precedent. Taehyung listened until he couldn't anymore. "You're afraid," he said quietly. The room stilled. "You're afraid of what changes if we stop hiding," Taehyung continued. "But change doesn't disappear just because you ignore it." The silence that followed was different, less certain, less controlled. Finally someone spoke. "If we proceed without denial, things will shift." Taehyung nodded. "They already have." The meeting ended with no clear victory, only acknowledgement, and that, Taehyung realized, was more than he'd expected. Outside, the sky was brighter than it had been in days. As they walked away from the building, Jungkook glanced at him. "Do you regret it?" Taehyung thought about the fear, the fallout, the uncertainty stretching endlessly ahead. Then he thought about the moment their hands had joined on camera, the relief that followed, the weight lifted from his chest. "No," Taehyung said. "Do you?" Jungkook smiled, small but genuine, not even a little. Taehyung smiled back. The world was still loud, still divided, still watching. But for the first time, Taehyung felt like whatever came next would be faced honestly. Together, and that, he knew, would change everything. The days that followed blurred into something Taehyung barely recognized as normal life. Schedules changed overnight. Endorsements were paused pending review. Meetings replaced rehearsals. Conversations that once felt casual now carried weight, every word measured twice before being spoken aloud. Taehyung felt it everywhere. In the way staff hesitated before greeting him. In the way rooms fell quiet when he entered. In the way his name was spoken carefully, like it might fracture if handled wrong. Jungkook noticed it too. They didn't talk about it at first. They didn't need to. Silence had always been their shared language. One afternoon, Taehyung sat alone in a practice room, music playing softly without direction. He wasn't dancing, just listening, letting the sound fill the empty space where certainty used to live. The door opened quietly. Jungkook stepped inside, carrying 2 bottles of water. He handed one over without a word and sat beside Taehyung on the floor. "They pulled my solo shoot," Jungkook said casually, as if commenting on the weather. Taehyung's jaw tightened. "Did they say why?" Jungkook shrugged, scheduling conflicts. They both knew what that meant. Taehyung stared at the mirrored wall, watching their reflections sit side by side. "I'm sorry." Jungkook turned to him. "Don't." Taehyung looked at him then. "This is happening because of us." "This is happening because the system doesn't know what to do with honesty," Jungkook replied. "That's not on you." Taehyung exhaled slowly. He wanted to believe that. Later that week, Taehyung was called into another meeting. This one smaller, quieter, no tablets, no prepared statements. Just questions. Are you prepared for the long-term impact? Do you understand how this could limit opportunities? Are you willing to accept a different trajectory? Taehyung listened, hands folded calmly in his lap. Yes, he said to all of it. When he left the room, his legs felt weak, but his mind was clear. That night he and Jungkook sat on the balcony of Taehyung's apartment, city lights stretching endlessly below. The air was cool, grounding. Do you ever wish we'd waited? Jungkook asked quietly. Taehyung considered it, the easier path, the quieter choice. No, he said. I wish we hadn't been forced to hide in the first place. Jungkook nodded, me too. Fan reactions continued to evolve. The initial shock gave way to something more complex. Support messages grew longer, more personal. Stories from people who felt seen. Letters from fans who said the video had given them courage. Not all of it was kind. Some words cut deep. Accusations, disappointment, anger from people who felt ownership over something that had never belonged to them. Taehyung read less now, protected his peace when he could. One message stayed with him. Thank you for choosing truth, even when it cost you comfort. He saved it. During a group rehearsal, the atmosphere shifted subtly. Nothing was said outright, but glances lingered longer. Conversations paused when Taehyung and Jungkook stood too close. Finally, one of the members spoke up. You good? The voice asked. Taehyung met his gaze. Yeah. A beat. Then that's what matters. It wasn't a dramatic declaration. It didn't need to be. That quiet acceptance felt heavier than applause. Weeks passed. Some opportunities never came back. Others arrived unexpectedly. Smaller platforms, different audiences, conversations that felt more honest. Taehyung found himself writing again. Lyrics without filters. Melodies shaped by uncertainty instead of perfection. One evening, he played a new song softly in the studio. Jungkook listened from the corner, eyes closed. When the last note faded, Jungkook opened his eyes. That's different. Taehyung smiled. It's real. Jungkook nodded. I like this version of us. Taehyung leaned back, watching the ceiling. Me too. There were still hard days. Days when Taehyung wondered if he'd been selfish. If his choice had put too much weight on Jungkook's shoulders. Days when fear crept in quietly, whispering doubts he thought he'd left behind. On those days, Jungkook would find him. Sit beside him. Say nothing. Stay. And somehow that was enough. One night, long after the noise had softened, Jungkook spoke into the dark. If everything changes, if this isn't what we imagined anymore, would you still choose me? Taehyung didn't answer immediately. He turned, looking at Jungkook's silhouette against the faint glow of the city. I already did, he said, every day since. Jungkook's hand found his, fingers threading together naturally, without fear of cameras or consequences. The future remained uncertain. Contracts would be renegotiated. Paths would shift. The industry would continue to resist change even as it slowly adapted. But something inside Taehyung felt lighter. He no longer measured himself against expectations that didn't fit. He no longer carried a secret that demanded silence. He had chosen honesty. And in doing so, he had found something steadier than approval. As dawn broke softly over the city, Taehyung realized that this chapter wasn't an ending. The world didn't suddenly become quieter after that. If anything, it grew louder in new ways. But Taehyung learned something important as time moved forward. Noise fades. Truth stays. There were still cameras, still opinions, still days when the weight of everything pressed down harder than expected. But there were also mornings filled with calm, late nights with honest conversations, moments where breathing felt easier than it ever had before. Taehyung stopped asking himself who he was supposed to be. He started asking who he already was. And the answer no longer scared him. Standing where he was now, Taehyung understood that courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about choosing to stay, even when walking away would have been easier. It was about holding onto something real in a world that preferred perfection over honesty. He didn't know what the future would look like. None of them ever truly did. But he knew this. He would no longer shrink himself to fit a story written by others. He would no longer trade truth for comfort. And he would no longer apologize for feeling deeply. Because at the end of the day, what remained wasn't the headlines, the rumors, or the moments frozen on camera. What remained were the quiet choices. The hands held when no one was watching. The strength found in finally being seen. And if there was one thing Taehyung wanted people to understand, it was this. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do isn't fighting back. It's standing still, being honest, and letting the world adjust. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for listening, for watching, and for choosing empathy over judgment.